Okay, for paint, I just use these cheap little paints you can get at Hobby Lobby. This one's the Folk Art. This is the Apple Barrel, and they're relatively inexpensive, a couple dollars or less. Sometimes you can get them on sale. And the brushes I use, I'll put a base coat on them first, and then I'll come back and dry brush details on the top, highlights. And I like to use a fairly stiff brush to do the highlights on. And you may see me rubbing the brush on my shirt to dry it off. And you can see my shirt here. I put an old t-shirt on to make the brush dry. I'll use a paper towel too, but sometimes it's just easier just to wipe it on my shirt. So you may be seeing me do that. All right, let's get some paint going here. Get some brown. And this was burnt sienna. So I'll start off with some smaller ones on the burnt sienna. So I'll just give them a good coat. Oh, help if I get right back in camera, huh? So you can see what's going on. So I'll just give them a good coat of base color. Yeah, I'll get my hands painted dirty and nasty. Alright, so put that on there. Since I got this color going, we'll go ahead and give this one. Get back over here under the camera. Now, what I'll do here is I may add just a little bit of white to this. I'm gonna give it a little squirt of white, and then just drop her to the yellow. Give that a mix up here, and that'll just change the base color slightly. So get this on these. So that they aren't quite all the same. That just helps add to the realism. And then for these other ones here, I'll go even lighter. So I'll add a little bit more yellow to it. Maybe just a little bit of brown, orange. And let's see what that looks like without putting white in there. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, so we'll put another color on this. The base color. All these little and I don't bother sanding these rocks down, because that sand texture or ground texture will just give it another depth of realism to it when I start adding the highlights, the dry brush highlights on it. This gives it something to reach out on. I'll go ahead and give this one another coat here. And I'm gonna add some black to it, and that's gonna give it a little bit of a gray tone. I want that to be a little bit lighter, so I'm gonna tad bit of white on there. Okay, so it's not just complete gray, black and white, since it's got the other colors in there, but it is a gray. I mean, it gives it a good gray color. So I'm gonna give these a little coat of that. And like I say, this is just base coats. I'm gonna go back over here after these had time to dry and put highlights on them. And I'll do several washes of highlights. And it'll kind of lighten these back up after the highlights get on them. Okay. So there's the bundle of rocks here. But anyway. Alright, after those dry, we'll put the highlights on them. Matter of fact, this one may be dry enough already. So let's try it. Here, let's put these back over here in their piles. Cup of water over here. And these are just little cheap brushes. I get it. Hobby Lobby also. I buy a whole set of them for $3 or $4. Alright, so I want to do some highlights on this. I'm going to add white back to this. And a little bit of this burnt sienna. I want it to be a little bit lighter than the base coat. So mix that up. Don't matter if that other color gets in there, it's just a matter of fact, I'm gonna put a little bit of that in there just to tone it down. I don't want to use pure colors on there because then it looks too fake. So so this is where the dry brush comes in. So what I'll do is I'll take just a little bit, dab it all off, and just real lightly start going over it. It may be too much. This is where I wipe it on my shirt. So just, I don't know if you can see that or not. It starts adding just a little, it starts hitting on the grind top. The ground, the highs and lows of the where it's been ground. So I'll do the first layer, where you can kind of see that starts adding a little bit of highlights on the raised edges. These may not be dry enough yet, we'll see. Oh yeah, it's fine. But you can kind of see how if you don't grind it down too smooth, then your grinding edge just picks up the color and gives it the texture. And I'll do that, so like I say, I'll do that several times with a couple different layers of color. Now I might vary it light and dark. And in just a minute here, I'll use a toothbrush to put some spatters on it. That's messy, but it looks good. And when I'm done, just tapping in a dry spot over here to knock off excess paint. Just giving it a let's see what this one does. This actually needed a lighter color, I think. But that's fine. I'll add some more on it. I didn't get quite that one ground down quite smooth enough, but it'll be alright. I can turn it and hide it. I don't know if that's showing up very well on camera. This may not be dry enough. If you get too hard, you can use your finger or thumb or something to wipe it off if it gets on too heavy. Like if you get a glob on there. That's why it helps to have that brush as dry as possible. Okay, so you can kind of see little highlights. Do these here. These probably need a little lighter color on it. Okay, that'll work for now. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to put them all here in a pile, and I'm going to do some spatter on them with the toothbrush. So I just get an old toothbrush. I'm going to put some black in this over here. So I want the spatter to be a little darker. And I dip the toothbrush in water. Just touch it on there. And just, oh, too much on that one. Give it a few spatters off somewhere else. Let me do it on this paper towel. So just real lightly, that might not show up on camera. And again, it might, so. And that's just giving it a little bit more texture. And I'll do that a couple times as well. So, alright, I'm going to go to a lighter highlight now. Mix a little white in with the same base color I was using a while ago. So, I'm going to get it real dry here. We'll start on this one. That's too much, not dry enough. There we go. And just see. Maybe a little bit right in there. This was the point I get to talking to myself, so I maybe sound like I'm just mumbling here. Dry it off. Just hit the edges. And that just gives another layer of highlight color to it. Sometimes kind of smearing it helps. Not too much. And these will get a clear coat also once the base is complete. And then in the second, I'll use some of the same color to paint the gravel with. Give the gravel a and that'll help the gravel blend in with these colors. Oops. That was turning out nice. Okay. So I may do one more splattering of color in there with some yellow. Just a tiny little drop of yellow here. And let me go a little bit lighter with some white in that. I want this will add just a little bit of color to that, to those highlights. Too much. Tone it down a little bit here. All right. So I'll pick it up again here, and again I'm just going to hit the highlights, the edges. Rub some of that off if it gets too heavy. Too heavy there. I gotta learn to stay in the camera. Okay. That ought to do it, I think. And I'll give these another little spattering of toothbrush just to give it a little bit of a. And I'll use some of this lighter color to spatter with also, but I'm gonna start off with the black. Just to give it a little bit of a. Not wet enough. with some of this highlight color here. It needs a little more white in there, I think, just to brighten it up some. Just a tiny bit. Dab it a little bit. Okay. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a little bit of moss on these, like I did with the with these rocks, to give it a little bit of a base. Let's see, get my blue out here. Give me just a minute. Okay. For just stuff out of the way. And for putting this Mod Podge on, I just buy these little cheap metal disposable brushes. Okay, so I'll just get the Mod Podge on the brush, and it's gonna go lightly around the base, alternating up and down. I may go a little higher on some areas of it, and just go around the base of it. Just irregular patterns, and I just dip it down in this moss, knock off the excess, tap it in, try to mash it in. I'll try that again here on the next one, stay in camera. So let's try to stay in camera on this one. Alright, take the Mod Podge and just irregular shapes around it. Oops. Drop it on the kitchen table. Good thing I got this little black plastic tarp on here. And just roll it in the mash it down in the glue. And voila, got a little moss growing on it. Alright, we'll do it on these other ones, and then I'm going to get the gravel out and start painting it.